Welcome back to Plant Families in Our Foods, Series 1. My name is Ivea Moore. Sometimes people call me the Mad Botanist. Can't imagine why. And, um, and so this will be the first of 9 weeks. We'll be going over 8 plant families just to get used to looking in and seeing the patterns of these families. The idea is not to cram our heads full of knowledge. You don't have to learn every single plant in the world. I identify as a botanist, but that's not because I necessarily know a bunch of plants. There's so many plants out there I don't know, so many families out there I don't know. And what makes me a botanist is my excitement and my enthusiasm to learn more. That's what makes me a botanist. And anybody here who wants to can be a botanist too. Anybody can identify as a botanist too, if you'd like. So I will, let me see here. Let me share my screen. Share screen. And so how this will work, and some of you might have already experienced this before, so you know, is first we'll look at pictures of 3 specimens from our family of the day. And we'll take 2 minutes with each one to draw as much or as little as we can. You don't have to worry about being perfect. It's not about pretty pictures, as Jack likes to say. It's about learning. So you can draw however much you want to of it. And then we'll take an extra minute to add any words and numbers to our pictures. Then we'll go over our family of the day, some key characteristics, and we'll talk about which foods are in our family of the day. And then we'll end with everybody's favorite part, which is spot the family member. At least I think people seem to like that part. So let's get started. Here is our first one. You don't have to exactly answer this question if you don't want to, but it's there to help guide if you like. So let's take 2 minutes to draw this, our first specimen, and starting now. Let's take about 10 more seconds. And that was our 2 minutes. So now let's take an extra minute to add any words, describing words it reminds me of, questions, observations, or numbers to our pictures. Starting now.
Gary.
Just a sec.
Let's take another 5 seconds. And that was our a little bit more than a minute. Y'all ready for number 2, for specimen 2? Yeah. Here we go. And again, we will take 2 minutes to sketch what we can from our photo. Starting now. We'll take about 20 more seconds. And that's our 2 minutes. And then we'll take 1 more minute to add any words and numbers to our pictures, starting now. We'll take about 10 more seconds. And there's our minute. And 1 more. We'll look at 1 more photo. And once again, we'll take 2 minutes to sketch. We'll take 10 more seconds. And there's our 2 minutes. And then we'll take 1 final minute to add any words and numbers to our pictures, starting now. About 15 more seconds. And there's our minute. All right. How's everyone doing? Pretty good? Good. I'm seeing some smiles. Are you all ready to meet our family of the day? Yeah? All right, here we go. Welcome to the mustard family. This is our friend and our first family of our course, the mustard family. Its scientific name, as we call it, is Brassicaceae. Oh, can people see this okay? People are able to see all of the text. There's nothing blocking. Okay, good. So this is Brassicaceae. It is, as you see, named for the genus Brassica, which is the Latin name for cabbage. The reason why I include the old name here is that I found that with some of the newer names, they're not always that intuitive. So I can't think of any words that have in common with Brassicaceae that would make you immediately assume mustard if you were hearing it for the first time. But the old name was cruciferae. And you might still hear people saying things like cruciferous vegetables. That's a bit more intuitive to me because, as you can see here, we have 4 petals on all of our members here, and they're sort of in the shape of an X or a cross. And so that's helpful to me to know that the old name was cruciferae, or like a crucifix. So that's why we call it that. Before I go on and before I talk about the 3 we've already seen, does anybody have any questions at this point? And you can unmute yourself if you have a question. No questions yet? Okay, here. So this one right here, does anybody know this one? Anybody want to guess? This one is a radish. It's a radish flower. And let's see if I can make it go backwards. This one is like the one we just saw, also a radish flower. Does anybody know this one? You may not know it, but if you've known me for a long time, you might hear me ranting about it sometimes when I go out to do restoration work. This one right here is called short pod mustard. It's a different genus than the mustards that we're used to eating, but we still do call it a mustard. Its genus is Hirschfeldia incana. So this is a short pod mustard. And does anybody know this one? Maybe seen it growing in a garden? Maybe eaten the leaves? This one is arugula. So these are arugula flowers. Very spicy. So now that we've introduced our family, we're going to go on to see if the screen will move. Sorry, sometimes it takes a second. Come on, you can do it. Ah, Yes, here we go. This is a new thing I'm adding in. And I'm adding this in because this will help us think about in future classes, the parts of the plants that we eat, since this is, of course, plant families in our foods. Now, when we think of plants that we eat, when we think of parts that we eat, most of us probably think of fruits, right? We think of fruits really, really readily, but there's a lot of different parts of a plant that we can eat depending on the plant. So I wanted to include roots, stems, leaves, flowers, fruits, and seeds. And I like how that kind of rhymes. Um, and so a thing to consider with each of the plants and also each of the families is which parts are we eating? Is there a trend in our family? Is there a family where we eat mostly maybe the flowers instead of the other parts? Is there not a trend in our family? Those things are good questions to ask because then that will help you get a better sense for the family as a whole and also an appreciation for the versatility of plants in our lives. So that's why I put this here to remind us to think about all these different parts that we have. Let me see here. I see that there's a, oh yeah, your roommate has arugula. The flowers, yep, the leaves are good. Let's see here. If we keep eating the leaves, it might not produce flowers. I think that you don't have anything to worry about with the arugula. One of the things about this particular family is that unless it's a really, really special case, they tend to bolt as fast as they possibly can. So you don't have to worry about them not producing flowers. It would take a miracle to stop them from producing flowers. So you can eat as many leaves and flowers as you like from the arugula, at least. Although not all members of this family are edible. So that's a thing to mention too. No worries about no camera. So, okay, that's our parts of the plant. And then one thing I like to do in each of our classes, we start with the basic flower anatomy. This is something that you might see, maybe a diagram in a textbook. And I'm trying not to do too vocabulary heavy in this course, just because, well, botanists, am I right? Botanists can be a little overwhelming with the vocabulary, almost as overwhelming as I want to say the moss people, or maybe it was the mushroom people. So here's our basics, and there might be some specialized vocabulary, but the focus here is not going to be about the vocabulary. It's going to be about sort of knowing where things are in the flower. So in a textbook, we'd have our stem, nice little thing. We have our sepals. Those are the little leaf-like appendages that you find beneath the petals. They're not leaves, but they're leaf-like. Then we have our petals. And then we have our stamens here that make pollen, and our pistil here, this sort of vase-like thing that makes seeds. And so the way that I remember with the vocab is I remember PSSP. Pistils make seeds and stamens make pollen. PSSP. In future workshops, we might go a little bit into the anatomy of the pistil, but not today. Not important for today. Let me see here. I want to make sure I'm not missing any of the chat. Oh, and yes, the arugula flowers are edible. The arugula flowers they're spicy, but I like them. So this is our basic flower diagram. But I like to include alongside that what our family looks like, because it doesn't always look just like the diagram. It might be in a bit of a different configuration. So we've got our stem and we've got our sepals here. In Brassicaceae, we have 4 sepals, and a lot of times they kind of stick straight up instead of flopping to the side. I could sort of think of it the same way that you might have a crisp white shirt on that you button up and then it sticks very stiffly to your neck. And then maybe the collar of your suit or whatever, maybe your shirt flops. And the part that flops, those are the petals here. So we have 4 petals. As we mentioned, they're in the shape of a cross. Sometimes they flop way over and sometimes they stick up, depending on the species. So far that's 4 sepals, 4 petals. Then we have 6 stamens. 4 of them will be tall like this, and 2 of them will be short and usually will be sticking at the edges of the petals. I'll show you one of the pictures in a second so I can sort of demonstrate, but there are 6 stamens. And then there is 1 pistil sticking up through the middle. And the pistil is oftentimes taller, but not always. Sometimes it can be around the same height. And often it will have sort of it looks like a little ball or a little button on the tip. So these are our parts so far. Does anybody have any questions so far? Oh, the short stamens account for the weird symmetry of the flower. I sort of think so. Oh, pardon the people walking by. So yeah, the short stamens might mean that it's not perfectly radially symmetrical. Instead, it's got bilateral symmetry. Yeah, PSSP, absolutely. So the pistils here, this is the part that makes the seeds, and then the stamens over here make the pollen. So then P for pistil and then S for seed, and then S for stamen and P for pollen. So PSSP. I like these observations, Susan, about how the shape looks. Does anybody else have any questions? I appreciate all of these questions. And there's no such thing as a silly question, so you can ask anything. No? Do people need another moment to draw this? Or I'll give people another moment to draw. I've been trying to see if I've noticed any patterns in the leaves of these plants, but I don't. No, some families will have leaves that'll be, a lot of times either rounded leaves or maybe that they'll be pinnate. These ones, I don't notice a very strong trend in the leaves. Just that sometimes in some of the species, they'll smell really strongly like mustard. They'll have that kind of smell that when you've boiled cabbage for too long, you're like, ooh. Or you might like it. I sometimes do. Ooh, let's see here. Okay. Also, another thing, if you like to put puns into the chat or say puns out loud, puns are welcome here. I see that Susan wrote a nice one here. I'm sorry they changed the name of the family from Cruciferae to the less descriptive Brassicaceae. That's our cross to bear. Thank you, Susan. All right, here. So just to reiterate, our key characteristics are our 4 sepals, our 4 petals, our 6 stamens, 4 long and 2 short, our 1 pistil, and one more thing, flowers and fruits will go radially up the stalk like a spiral staircase, and we call that a raceme. Although that name is not important, it's more important to know that they go up like a spiral staircase when you're looking at it. And these are the overall patterns, but sometimes plants like to play tricks on us. There might be plants that are in this family, but they don't follow maybe one or some of the trends. And then you just kind of look at the plant and you're like, I see what you're doing, you mischief maker, you. So the important thing is to let the plant that's in front of you tell you. So if there's no other questions, I think that we might be on to the part about what we eat. Who's ready for that? Did people eat today? People had food? All right, I'm about to make y'all a little bit more hungry. Here we go. Oh wait, no, I take that back. I forgot about this. Okay, we're gonna look inside first and then we're gonna go look at what foods are. So this is just to help again. So these are the sepals. As you can see, they go like, and then we have our petals. In this case, they kind of stick up. These are 2 of the 4 stamens here. So there would be 2 more on this side as well. And then these are our short ones in here. So we would have 6 total. And then this right here is our pistil. In this case, it's really, really long and it makes something that we call a cilique, which is where it kind of opens up symmetrically and then the seeds all scatter. So that's a little bit what it looks like on the inside. And now we get to talk about the foods. Okay, here. If people would like to, I want to encourage you to unmute and call out some answers. What foods do you think are in Brassicaceae?
Cauliflower.
Cauliflower. Okay.
Sprouts.
What's that? Sorry.
Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts.
Mustard.
Yep.
Mustard.
Broccoli.
Broccoli. What else?
Cabbage.
Cabbage. Yep. All of these awesome. Any others? Or
Romanesco broccoli, the most beautiful broccoli.
oh yes, of course. From a mathematical perspective, it's quite lovely. I should have put that on my list.
Delicious.
I see kohlrabi. Yep. Okay, y'all ready? Here we go. Here are just a few. You don't have to write down the whole list, but I just thought it would be helpful to, yeah. So yeah, kale, broccoli, yep. Cauliflower, yep. Cabbage, yep. Brussels sprouts, collard greens, kohlrabi, yep. Gailan. I put this like this because all of the ones on this side over here are actually the exact same species. They're just different cultivars. All of these here, kale, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, collard greens, kohlrabi, and gailan, are all, what is it? Brassica oleracea. They're all the exact same species. That's pretty crazy, huh? But we have cultivated and sort of bred them so that way different parts will be emphasized. So with the broccoli, we might want that lovely stem that we like to eat to be emphasized. Also, does anybody know the part of broccoli that we usually eat when you think of the tops of the broccoli?
That the flowers?
They are.
Flower?
They are the unopened flower buds, the ones that are still closed. So we eat mostly the buds and the stem. So yeah, so the broccoli might be emphasized for its stem and its unopened flower buds. With the cabbage, it might be for its leaves that we're wanting to eat. Whereas for the kohlrabi, maybe it's that we want that lovely bulge in the stem. So that's part of why I wanted to go over the different parts of the plants that we eat, because we have so many. And then we have over here, we have all of these. We have mustard, radish, turnip, horseradish, wasabi, bok choy, tatsui, all of these, canola oil, arugula, broccolini, rutabaga, and I know I've missed a few. Yep. And I see Rebecca also answered that they were flower buds. Now, here's a question. Are there any on this list, or sorry, rather I should say, are there any plants that you would expect to be on this list, but that they're not? Or is this not a surprise? Sorry. Any you might expect, but you don't see. It's true. Iceberg lettuce does look a lot like a cabbage.
I happen to have an iceberg lettuce right next to me, but it is not cabbage.
Not. It looks like it could be a cabbage. I remember as a kid thinking that anything that was a leafy green had to be in this family. But we're going to encounter lettuce's family later, but a little spoiler alert, lettuce is actually a sunflower. And you can tell that when the flowers come out, but we'll talk about that later.
But everything's a sunflower, so you know.
Pretty much. So
is it the case that because I know a lot of the ones that I'm familiar with have a very waxy feel to them, to the leaves and to the substance, and you know, broccoli, it feels very waxy as well. Is that a general characteristic of these, or just? And also some of the wild mustards that I've seen also have a kind of a waxy feel. So I'm wondering if that is something in general, or just happens to be the case for the ones that I have looked at.
That's a really good question. I won't say that it's the case on every one of them, but it is a very common case. And in a way, that's not very surprising, because a lot of the members of that family that we eat are sort of cultivated to be more cool season ones. I know that there's a lot of broccoli and others that are grown here in California during the winter specifically. The cool vegetables are grown out here during the winter. And so it helps them in that case to have a bit of a waxy coating to be able to withstand the rain without rotting away. I'm not sure that that means that it's all of the ones, but that's definitely something to watch out for and take note of if there are other ones that we find in the wild that have similar characteristics.
What about kale? That kind of looks like cabbage.
Yep, it does. You're right. And it has those lovely crinkly leaves. I love those leaves.
Yeah.
It does. And that's not surprising since they're the exact same species too. So
Oh, is it one of them too? Okay.
it is. Yep. They're both Brassica oleracea.
What about nasturtium?
Now nasturtium, I
And the
believe.
reason I ask is because cabbage white caterpillars will eat basically any kind of mustard or, you know, cabbage or any of these things, and they will also eat nasturtium. But the structure of the whole thing is a totally different thing, but it's also kind of waxy and also kind of spicy.
Well, just to make matters really confusing, I think that there is an actual nasturtium genus that might be in Brassicaceae, but the ones that we think of that we call nasturtium are actually Tropiolum. And I don't believe that they are in Brassicaceae. I think they're in their own family, just because they decided to be confusing about things. But I do appreciate that question. And it's true that they do taste a lot like it. And I see that Nancy brought up spinach. I'm really glad you asked about the spinach. Spinach is in a different family that we might get to in series 2. That's in Amaranthaceae, formerly in a separate family called Chenopodiaceae. But I'm really glad that you asked about the spinach, because there's a group of the ones in Amaranthaceae that I used to get mistaken for Brassicaceae as well, because they're also leafy greens. So I'm glad you asked about that one. Any others, or do people want to go on to the spot the family member? Y'all ready for the spot the family member? Okay,
Yes.
here we go. And it's time to play everybody's favorite game of, oh, not that. Spot the Brassicaceae. I was meant to delete that other slide. Anyways, here, I'm going to launch our poll now because finally not YouTube, whatever this thing is called, let me. This thing finally let me do it. So can everybody see the poll? No? Oh, wait. Hands up if you can see the poll. A few people can see the poll. Okay. Oh, good. Okay, good. So folks can vote. These are all anonymous, so you don't have to worry. And one suggestion I have is to have fun with it. You don't have to know the answer. It's not even necessarily about guessing the right answer. It's just about beginning to see within the flowers and look for the patterns. This is just practice. So that way, when you're out in the wild, you'll know what to look for when you're looking at these plants. Oh, I like what you said, Rebecca. No, my brassicas. Let's see here. Oh, and I've seen all 8 people have voted. Okay, here we go. And it looks like everybody got the right answer. So let's see here. It is.
Sorry, Ivea, I'm seeing that there are 11 participants and I never got a poll showing up.
Huh.
So I'm not sure if you're seeing the right number of participants. But also I didn't see the poll. So anyway, that's okay. I'll happily join in the next one, but I'm just noting that might be an issue.
Thank you for that. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why I didn't. It only showed me 8. I'll hopefully next one it will launch correctly. But yep, so folks who guessed C, yep, you're right. This is actually a broccoli flower. But now my question, which I'm more excited about, is what told you that C was the Brassicaceae? And that's wonderful that you were going to guess A. I'd be curious to know, what about A made you think Brassicaceae?
Well, now that I look more closely at C, I can see the dead giveaway, but I was focusing on the fact that the top flower in A has got 4 petals, even though they're split. And I have seen members of the mustard family growing wild that have those split petals. Yep. And it looked like it had that like bilateral but not radial symmetry. Mm-hmm. And I could only see 4 stamens, but I figured the other 2 were tucked in there. Yep. But then now I'm looking more closely. I'm like, oh, I see that there's those 6 stamens, 2 of which are very short in C. So,
yep. And if this was difficult, it was meant to be. I intentionally try to put ones that look similar to each other because nature's tricky that way. A over here is a willow herb from Onograceae, a family that also tends to deal in patterns of 4s. So that's why I put it here. But yeah, I'm curious to know what told people that C was their Brassicaceae.
So I just put this in the chat too, but when I was drawing the pictures of the ones earlier, I noticed that the petals are kind of overlapped each other, which is something I hadn't really noticed before. So that was, in addition to the 6 in C, I noticed that.
Very cool. I hadn't noticed before the way that they seem to overlap a lot. So that'll be a pattern I look for. I appreciate that.
I was actually looking at something that seemed mustardy out in the pine bush today, and with very small flowers, and that had that sort of like 2 up, 2 down kind of situation, which is
Mhm.
why I was thinking about that. But the petals definitely didn't overlap. So I wonder if there's a connection between the size of the flowers and the overlapping. Seems like we need more data.
Absolutely. And then like Susan already said too, we have our 2 tucked down in here, and then our 4 tall ones up here, and then our 1 kind of button here in the center. So that is our broccoli flower. Are y'all ready for round 2? Yeah. Okay, here we go. And let me try to relaunch this. How do I do this? Okay, relaunch. Yes, we want to relaunch. There we go. Can everybody see it? I hope people can see the poll. Now it says 10 people. Okay, cool. And again, no worries. This is all just practice. All right. I think we have most people have answered this, so I'll give folks maybe another couple of seconds. Y'all ready? Yeah. And our answer is B. It is sweet alyssum. This one was a little bit harder. I'm curious to know what told what told people that this was our brassica or Brassicaceae rather, and or what led them to think it was one of the other 2, because there are definite things that they share in common with the Brassicaceae.
I was looking at the stamens again, the 6.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you saw these 6 stamens in here?
And then is the pistil always like a little button like that?
From the ones I've seen, that seems to be pretty common. I don't want to say that they're all like that, but I'm not remembering any that have looked different from that. So I think possibly, yeah. What else?
I noticed the 6 in B, but the petals weren't really in a cross shape. It was kind of like 2 petals on the top and 2 on the bottom. So C, the petals seemed more of like the typical Brassicaceae shape in the cross shape, but I figured, so I was like, which one can be variable? Like which one's variable in this case? Which one is more likely to be true for Brassicaceae? And I thought like lots of flowers have 4 petals in a cross shape, even in other families. So I thought C was more likely to be something else. And then the 6 stamens was more likely to be Brassicaceae.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because to me, I think from having looked at a few sort of mustard species that I've gotten a lot of help from iNaturalist on here, like I really sort of picked up on that not exactly a cross shape as being characteristic of some mustards that I've been trying to identify. And so that like that like sort of the center is almost like kind of diamond shaped, and I guess it must be because those 2 shorter stamens are sort of pushing the sides out or something. So that was actually what I picked up on. But also C looks like it has a calyx, which you haven't not mentioned as part of this family. So, and then A has a sort of a very fancy curly pistil that we didn't mention as being characteristic of this. A fancy pistil.
And that's a good point though too, about because I said that they tend to be cross-shaped, that could have actually been really misleading of me. So I'm glad that y'all mentioned that about the petal shapes, because that wasn't on my radar. So I guess we could say either cross-shaped or maybe H-shaped because of the way that those two stamens push out the sides. What else? I thought I saw some other folks were going to say something as well. So what other things did you notice? Nothing else? That's okay. But yeah, I can definitely see now, like, because like you said about the cross shape of the petals, or this one even more so. But then we had this weird pistil right here that has the 5 parts. This one is a pelargonium, a member of the geranium family. And this one over here is a jasmine with some really weird petals because they don't always come out as 4s. But yeah, MA is a geranium. So these are the kind of discussions I really like, because sometimes it's good to see the similarities too, even if they're not the same family, because then seeing the similarities or seeing certain traits will help you narrow things down. I noticed that somebody had said by process of elimination that they decided that it was B, and that's another good way of doing it too. All ready for the final round? Yeah. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to take a second to relaunch our poll. Let's see here, ending that and relaunching now. And yes. And there we go. I see almost everybody is guessed. I'll give folks just a few more seconds. And you all ready? I think almost everybody. One person didn't, and that's okay if you don't want to guess as well. So it was indeed B. I saw everybody had guessed B. Now you might be wondering why I included this one when this one clearly is not a Brassicaceae. This is a little preview for one of our families that we're going to see in a few weeks. I included it just because I wanted to include a preview. You'll notice something about me in the quizzes. I like to either include ones that are going to come up later or ones that we've already done. So you might be seeing Brassicaceae again in a future quiz, just as one of our options. So what told people that it was not C?
Mostly 5 petals. There's one on the side that has 4 petals, but I think that's an anomaly. But most of the flowers have 5 petals.
Yep, this one is our anomaly of 4, whereas most of them have 5. And then was there anything special about this one that you noticed that made it especially clear that it was a wallflower, that this was our one? Yep, succulent leaves. That is one thing, is that I haven't really seen many Brassicaceae with succulent leaves, except if you have like a cabbage or something, but that's not quite the same thing as this kind of succulents. Does anybody notice too that a lot of the Brassicaceae seem to have really, really similar looks on these flower buds? That broccoli look to them. And then this right here is one of our seed pods, what we call a silique or a silicle. And it might be a little bit hard to tell in this one, but it sort of climbs up the stalk here like a spiral staircase. Harder to
I
tell.
was gonna say the seed pods, like the long and thin green part, looks a lot like the seed pods on the wild mustard we have growing wild in our garden right now.
They do.
It's just, I kept meaning to get pictures of some mustard seeds for you, and I thought, oh, mustard family will not be the first family that you cover. So, but I figured I will draw a picture. I don't know how well you can see it, but I was drawing some pictures of those seed pods on
Actually, you reminded me. Thank you for reminding me, Susan. If anybody ever wants to send me either pictures of flowers that they have in their garden or pictures of their drawings or plants in general, you can always send them to me. I'll put it in the chat really fast. But people are always welcome to send me ones, either as a question or just something cool that you want to share, or if you want to see it in a future quiz, you can always send them to me and I will always enjoy them. So that was our final one. Then we just have our last recap really fast here. Just to recap.
Can I guess though on the first one? Maybe you don't want to say because it's a spoiler, but is A impatience?
You know,
or that is some variety of that. Impatience is genus, but
the weird thing is that this is actually a case where I know the family, but not the flower itself. Because I get a lot of things within this particular family mixed up. There's one particular genus, the Salvia genus, that I get everything mixed up in. So I'm gonna have to check and see if it is an impatiens or not. But thank you for thank you for saying that name, because now I'll have something.
Impatiens is a genus, and I don't know what family it's in. So if that's the Salvia genus, then it probably isn't the same genus, plant at least.
Cool.
But we have some jewel weeds here that are not so beautifully blindingly pink, but have a very similar sort of structure to the flowers. So
DB just said a name in the chat that is familiar to me, so I think that you're right. Hot lips salvia.
Be a good name for
But
it.
I still want to look up impatiens now, but yeah, thank you for that, DB. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a hot lip salvia. Yep, the flower reminds you of purple dead nettle, Rebecca. That's why that'll be our to look at. So yep, that's a little preview. So just to review, we have our 4 sepals. We have our 4 petals that are sometimes in a cross shape and sometimes in an H shape, and I will add that to my description. 6 stamens, 4 long and 2 short. Our 1 pistil, oftentimes with a little button at the very end. And our spiral staircase fruits, which are often siliques on stalks. And that's it for that part of our thing. But I want to invite folks, if people would like to either ask questions or share, then we can do that right now. Also, this will be, because I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, I will keep recording so that way I can write down any questions, but I won't be putting this part on the YouTube. So nobody needs to feel uncomfortable about their faces being on the YouTube if they don't want. But I'll record simply so that I can come back later to do the questions. So sure. Thank you so much for being here for our first week. I also lead a Wednesday session of this exact same class, so you're not missing anything. If you're not there on a Wednesday, you don't have to be there on a Wednesday too. It'll just be this exact same one led again for people who might be living in England like Ray Bonto. And then you're welcome to come to as many or as few classes as you like. And I hope to see you all again for more plenty fun. And thank you for being here tonight with me.